Hello, I'm Jack Blanchard.
And I'm Dasha Burns. It is Monday, July 7th.
And this is the Playbook podcast. Dasha, how are you doing? Did you have a good Independence Day weekend?
I did. I was transformed. I was transported by the one, the only Queen Bee. I saw Beyonce on the 4th of July.
Oh, wow.
There is just nothing like a Beyonce show. If you haven't been to one, you absolutely need to go. It was absolutely extraordinary. I took my husband. It was his first Beyonce show, and he also was experiencing some transcendental dreams. It was everything that one could ever hope for out of a show.
Look, there's a lot of news. We're going to talk about loads of big stories that are happening today because there's a lot of news around. The big headlines are obviously what's happened in Texas. They are the trade tariff announcement that Donald Trump is going to announce today in a series of letters. And we've got Benjamin Netanyahu in the White House as well. So there's loads of news happening. But before we talk about any of that, Dasha, I just want to squeeze this in because we've got this amazing thing at the top of the Playbook newsletter this morning.
Yeah.
So we've had lots of political books out this year, right? There's another one coming tomorrow, which looks very interesting indeed by some of the White House correspondents. You'll know them well. Josh Dorsey, Tyler Pager, Isaac Arnsdorf have got a book out tomorrow called 2024, How Trump Retook the White House and the Democrats Lost America. It's going back through the 2024 election campaign. They have got their hands on this memo, which they've very kindly shared with Playbook. We've stuck it online this morning so people can read it. It is the 6-page memo, Dasha, which convinced President Joe Biden that it would be a good idea to push for an early TV debate with Donald Trump last June. This is a memo from his senior advisors. I don't know how wrong you can get a piece of advice, but it's extraordinary to put yourself in these people's position. Take yourself back to like April 2024, right? And they've written this memo for the president and they say to him, you should get involved with TV debates with Donald Trump, which have been proposed for the autumn, like September, October, just before the election. They say, oh no, that's not a good idea. We need to move, they say, as soon as possible. And they tell him, by holding the first debate in the spring, you will be able to reach the widest audience possible, they tell him. In addition, the earlier you're able to debate, the better, so that the American people can see you standing next to Trump and showing the strength of your leadership compared to Trump's weakness and chaos. That's not quite what happened, as I recall, that debate, as I stretched my mind back to June 2024.
There is no greater juxtaposition than what is in that memo and what not just us in the press, but what the entire world witnessed on that first debate. And I am just kind of flabbergasted at that piece of writing, given the hindsight that we have now. I mean, there is now widespread consensus among Democrats that not just only the debate and the timing of it, but just President Biden running again was a terrible idea. And that debate being sort of that moment when we talk about the secret of what was going on in the White House and the sort of behind the scenes and the cover up, as some reporters have put it. It was that debate, that early debate, that gave people that glimpse.
I mean, it does also strike me that, you know, it looks a bit less of a cover up when you see their advisors telling him that they thought this was a good idea. What were they thinking? Like, if they really knew how bad it could have gone, you surely wouldn't have been writing out 6-page memos saying, yeah, get down there and then tell you with the president as soon as possible. It'll be great. It was not great. There'll be many more interesting nuggets of news, I'm sure, in this book that's coming out tomorrow. I dare say we'll read more bits of it and may even discuss it some more on this podcast. Let's get on with the day ahead, Dasha, because there's loads going on. Obviously, this horrible tragedy in Texas is dominating the mainstream news coverage. It has done most of the weekend, as you would expect. And I'm sure there'll be lots and lots more conversations about it today. As we know, dozens of people died in these awful flash floods. We should focus on the political side of it, Dasha, because it is a political story. We saw Donald Trump last night being questioned quite intensively by various poll reporters about whether or not is it possible that some of the big cuts that we know his administration has made this year to National Weather Service and other agencies might have somehow been a factor in the response to this awful tragedy. And I feel like although he was very dismissive of those questions, he sort of flanneled a bit and said, oh, no, it's just a terrible tragedy. Of course, it was just a terrible tragedy. I don't think those questions are going to go away anytime soon.
No, and look, this is something that anyone who has been working for DHS or anywhere in the FEMA, NOAA, National Weather Service related arenas, this is the kind of moment that they have been in fear of, which is a tragedy coming face to face with these DOGE cuts. And you can debate whether or not like it was understaffing that created more casualties than there needed to be. We're in, hurricane season. And we are watching weather disasters all across the country and across the world at the same time as the agencies that are there to serve people in those crises are changed, are cut back. And this could potentially become a serious problem for the White House. I know people in North Carolina and Asheville and in counties around there that are still devastated, that are saying, wait, the president campaigned on being more helpful than the Biden administration. He said that he was going to come in and service us and make sure that we got what we need, and they're still devastated. And that's a disaster that happened quite some time ago, let alone what is going on right now. And so this is one in, unfortunately, a season that pretends to be full of more dangerous moments where both state governments and federal governments will need to step up. And what that looks like is going to be critical.
We don't yet know the specifics of exactly what happened here and whether anything went wrong. There have been conflicting reports about that, I would say. And it's so soon after a tragedy like this, you can't really know exactly what happened. It is striking to see people sharing a story that was in a local news site a couple of months ago about the warning coordination meteorologist at the National Weather Service, the local office there, taking early retirement with those DOGE retirements. And the story was suggesting he wasn't likely to be replaced. Sounds like an important job. But so people share that stuff on the internet. They talk about it a lot. We don't yet know whether that could have played a critical role in helping to warn people or not. But I think the point is that if you go in slashing the heck out of the workforce in these kinds of agencies, you are going to leave yourself open to charges of political failure when bad stuff happens that these agencies have to deal with. I mean, it's just obvious that this was going to happen. And if it's not this tragedy, unfortunately, there will be other weather-related tragedies, right, in the months ahead where we're going to need FEMA, we're going to need some of these agencies. Not everything is going to go perfectly. And the president and his administration have opened themselves up to the charge every time where you cut loads of those staff. It could have been dealt with better, and it's on you.
Yeah, and we've seen increasingly worse storms, worse flooding, worse mudslides, worse fires across the board in recent years. And now we are seeing these serious cuts to FEMA, to the organizations that predict these storms, the organizations that respond to these disasters. And whether or not any single cut is to blame for that, certainly politically, it opens up a gaping wound in the federal government if the entire premise of these DOGE cuts, especially when it comes to FEMA, is put more onus on states and less on the federal government.
Let's move on to one of the other things that everyone's going to be talking about today. Something else that Donald Trump was asked about on the tarmac last night. He was standing next to Howard Lutnick, his Commerce Secretary, who interestingly was along for the ride, and those two guys were side by side. And I think the reason for that is that Donald Trump had set this deadline of July 9th some time ago as the day by which all these trade deals had to be done. And remember, at one point they were telling us, 90 trade deals in 90 days. Yeah. Sure, that's totally possible. Absolutely not. We're not really hearing that tune from them anymore. Well, they've signed 2.5 or something, basically.
No. And look, this is potentially another one of those moments where everyone is up in arms for 48 hours waiting to see what happens, and it ultimately becomes another delay. Or Trump wakes up on a different side of the bed and decides, no, you've taken too much time. This is where markets are concerned. Nobody knows exactly how President Trump is going to handle this, because I don't think President Trump knows exactly how he's going to handle this. He's been flying by the seat of his pants. He's been relying on his instincts here. And that's kind of how he does this. The problem with that is the entire global economic order is on the line here.
Oh, just that little thing. Yeah.
Just that little thing. Look, I think the reality has hit the White House that it takes time to make these deals, to hammer out the details, especially because there's a tariff piece and then there's a lot of non-tariff trade negotiations that they also want to have, and opening up certain countries to accept certain American goods and vice versa. So it's complicated. And there's part of the White House ethos that is these tariffs are kind of an injection of destabilization that gets countries to rethink how they negotiate with us. And that is the premise. That's the whole goal. It's not that these tariffs are here to stay and that's what we're going to do. It's just like getting this sort of psychological game into a place where countries understand that we are not okay with the status quo. And so we're going to change that. But the timeline is really dicey and really questionable. And so I wish I had a crystal ball, but even that I don't think could predict where Trump is going to go with this in the coming days and weeks.
You just can't. And the story seems to change from the White House day on day. So he told us on Friday that he would be sending out letters. He said he'd written them Friday. They're going out today, Monday, to 10 or 12 countries, telling them what their new tariff rates are going to be. He was like, trade deals actually pretty hard. It's just easier just to send them a letter saying this is the new tariff. We're like, oh, right. Yeah. So the trade deal thing is now over. We're just going to set tariff rates this week. Okay. Then we had Scott Bessent on CNN yesterday telling us, well, actually, some of the letters will just have another deadline in. 1st of August, you have to get your trade deal by then, or you're going back to the April tariffs. This is completely different from what the president's saying, completely different from what they were saying last week. No one really has any idea, as you say, what's going to happen. But I just feel like the idea that they're just going to go back to how it was in April, because let's not forget what happened in April. He announced all these tariffs. He nearly crashed the American economy, and he had to roll back a week later and look completely ridiculous in doing so. You can't just do it again because presumably, the bond markets will have something to say about that. And everybody knows that. And so instead, we have this like really weird back and forth. And we now have a deal with Vietnam, sort of, although we haven't actually seen the deal. Just the president's told us there is one. There's a sort of deal with China, but not really. We've been promised one with India. We haven't seen it. There was definitely a British one. That definitely did happen. And that feels like it's about it. The thing with Donald Trump is, Dasha, he's coming off such a strong run of results the last few weeks, with what happened with Israel and Iran, with, of course, the big, beautiful bill getting over the line last week. Very impressive political feat. The economy's going well. You really don't want to drop the whole tariff route back in there again, do you?
No, you don't. And you do in this moment have to think about the psychology of the president at this time, because he's optimistic right now. He feels good. He has the wind at his back. And if you are one of these leaders that is trying to make a deal with him, I do think this is a factor that you incorporate into your negotiation, wanting to help him keep his momentum. There are a lot of countries trying to make these deals right now in a very short amount of time. So that's the other factor. But he feels good right now. He doesn't want to drop the ball. And I think whatever he can say, like, hey, look, we've made 20 deals in the last 20 hours or whatever, like that could be an avenue he wants to go down.
One final deal he really wants to make this week is with Israel in Gaza. Yes. We have the other big event happening today is Benjamin Netanyahu is in town for the third visit to the White House.
He's probably spent much more time in the White House than any other foreign leader. Absolutely.
Half the cabinet, I should think. Yeah, he's here again today. And the hope for Donald Trump is that we're actually going to get some sort of peace deal with Hamas and Israel on Gaza. Donald Trump, of course, very desperate to be seen as a peacemaker. He said he thinks we're close to a deal on Gaza. He said yesterday, he said it could happen this week. We know that there was something agreed between Israel and America last week that Hamas has been talking to them about in Qatar over the weekend. It is not impossible that a big thing is going to get unveiled maybe today. Nobody seems to know for sure at this point, but Trump is pushing for it very, very hard. He wants it, right?
He absolutely wants it. He thinks he knows how to work with Bibi. They've been very close since his first administration. He's expressed frustration with him, but he also feels like the two of them are kind of compadres in how they see the world and in how they negotiate. So look, of all of the visits of foreign leaders, this is perhaps one of the most consequential right now because he needs to get Netanyahu to a place that in previous times when they've met, he hasn't had to push as hard. Right now, he has to make a real push.
And don't forget as well, of course, that they'll be talking about Iran, because it wasn't very long ago that was the biggest story in the world. And they'll probably be talking about Syria as well, because, of course, there's a new government there and the whole of the Middle East is still trying to renegotiate the terrain with there.
Oh, you mean the world's on fire? Yeah.
Well, yeah, that whole thing that we just occasionally have time to refer to. We're pretty much out of time. We're supposed to finish with something else fun. Have we got anything else fun to talk about, Dash, before we finish?
Okay, listen, I saw Beyonce on Friday. Some of you guys listening will be seeing her this evening, and I am so excited for you. Get prepared. Put your boots on. Get those boots on. Get those hats on. Get your bolo ties out. It is going to be a fully transformative experience, and I'm so excited for you because you will come back inspired, enlightened, and a whole new human being ready to take on the world. So get ready for it.
What an endorsement. There you go. That's all we've got time for on today's show. We have much more news and analysis in today's Playbook newsletter, which you can find at politico.com/playbook. And we will be back tomorrow. Thanks very much for listening.
Happy Monday, y'all.